If God was your friend, what would you tell him? Would you complain about your life? Would you ask why he's so silent? Would you ask for a miracle perhaps? Or would you just sit with him quietly, the way you sit with someone who truly understands you? Most of us were raised to believe that God is this distant force, an aloof cosmic landlord who owns the universe and audits your behavior like some celestial compliance officer. You obey him or you get punished. You follow the rules or you're out. And if something goes wrong, well, you must have done something to deserve it. It's no surprise then that so many people today feel disconnected from the divine. Many proudly call themselves non-believers or atheists, not necessarily because they reject spirituality, but because the version of God they inherited feels childish, outdated, or maybe worse, manipulative. After all, we live in a world where science has peeled back the curtain on so many mysteries that terrified our ancestors. The great lightning god striking down from the heavens. Turns out he's not God at all. He's just static electricity and atmospheric charge. We can measure it, predict it, and maybe even recreate it in a lab. So if all these ancient fears were just misunderstandings of nature, then what is God? Who is this all-powerful being we've been taught to obey? To answer this question, we have to take a few steps back. Today, we'll explore two things. What does God actually mean? And what are the different ways we can relate to him? Let's start with something simple. God is mystery. Not mystery in a spooky or vague sense, but mystery as in everything you do not know. If you're a believer, fine. If you're an atheist, also fine. If you're a nihilist and think everything is random, great. Even better. Just agree with me for one moment on one thing. There are things in this world that you do not know. Things you cannot predict, cannot control, and cannot fully explain. Yes? Whatever those things are, whatever lives beyond the boundary of your understanding, let's just call that God. This is our working definition. Nothing supernatural, nothing religious, nothing moralistic. Just a simple equation. God is equal to everything that is unknown, yet undeniably real. Now, what is mystery? Mystery, or these things that are unknown, are alive. Why are they alive? Because everything in existence, even the things we don't understand, is in motion. It is dynamic, it changes, it breathes in its own way. Think about it. We know the Earth rotates at a precise speed around 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. We can measure that. We can predict it and explain it, but that rotation itself, that movement, is alive. It's action, it's energy, it's motion. So the knowledge of the truth feels stable because the reality behind it is alive. Now apply that to the unknown, to the things beyond your comprehension, to the mysteries of consciousness, love, fate, death, longing, transformation. These forces also shift. They also move, they also breathe, they also ripple through your life. So if God equals mystery, and mystery equals something alive, dynamic, growing, moving, then God is not a rigid entity in the sky. God is the breathing unknown. The living mystery of existence, a force that relates to you, responds to you, nudges you, shapes you, reveals itself slowly. The problem begins when we try to freeze this living mystery into rules, into institutions, dogmas, into systems controlled by human agendas. That brings us to part 2. How do we relate to God? Throughout history, cultures have related to the divine in radically different ways. Some traditions saw God as an impersonal force, the Tao, Brahman, the cosmos. Others saw God as a personal being, a friend, a mother, a lover, a teacher. And still others turned God into a set of rules, a moral police, a judge, an authority figure used to maintain social order. Ironically, the more institutions tried to protect God with rules, the further people drifted away from him. Because how do you connect with a being who has become a checklist? But if God is a mystery that breathes, then your relationship with God can also breathe. God can be impersonal and personal, silent or intimate, cosmic or familiar, a force or a friend. In India, for example, the divine wears many faces: Krishna the lover, Rama the king, Shiva the ascetic, Durga the mother, Kali the destroyer, and the nameless Brahman beyond all form. All these forms exist because humans relate to mystery in different ways, and that diversity is not a contradiction. It's a sign of a living spiritual culture. Let me take you into a myth that illustrates this beautifully. In India, there is the story of Arjuna, a warrior, a leader, a man overwhelmed by the weight of his life. One day, standing on the battlefield of his own mind, he collapses. He says, "I cannot do this. Life is too heavy. Dharma is too confusing. I don't know who I am anymore." And instead of giving him commandments or dogma, God appears, but not as a lightning bolt, not as a booming voice from the heavens, not as a punishing deity. He appears as a friend, a charioteer, a companion, someone who sits beside him in the dust, in the fear, in the confusion, and he listens. In that moment, God is not a judge. God is the person who stays when you crumble. This story matters because it breaks a false image many of us carry. God is not the one who watches you from above. God is the one who sits with you when you fall. But modern culture pushes us towards an opposite idea. We live in society that worships productivity more than presence, metrics more than mystery, certainty more than sincerity. We have replaced contemplation with content, silence with stimulation, connection with performance, and mystery with algorithms. And perhaps the most painful shift, we have replaced God as friend with God as brand, God as ideology, God as identity badge, God as institution. No wonder why people feel so disconnected. Who can relate to a deity that's been turned into a marketing asset, a political weapon, or a Sunday obligation? Mystery cannot breathe in an environment like that. The divine cannot appear where the mind is too crowded. But this is exactly why the world feels spiritually starved. What we've lost is not God. What we've lost is intimacy. So how do we bring all this together? If God is mystery, alive, breathing, dynamic, and if humans relate to that mystery in personal ways, then the most honest relationship you can have with the divine is the one that feels like friendship. Not obedience, not fear, not performance. Friendship. A friend is someone you can be honest with, or you can ask a question to. You can wrestle with, you can cry with, you can laugh with, you can sit silently beside, you can be imperfect around. A friend doesn't demand your perfection. A friend demands your sincerity. So if God is alive, if the mystery is breathing, if truth is unfolding, then your relationship with that mystery can be simple. Sit with it, talk to it, ask it questions, let it guide you in its own time. You don't need certainty to relate to God. You need honesty. You don't need answers. You need presence. You don't need belief. You just need some curiosity. So let me return to the question we started with. If God was your friend, what would you tell him? Not the God from your childhood, not the God of institutions or fear, not the God of rituals you never understood. I'm talking about the God that breathes in the spaces of your life, in the questions that haunt you, in the moments where you don't know what to do, in the impulses that you do not understand, and the heartbreaks that break you open, and the longing that refuses to leave. What would you say to that God? Maybe you wouldn't say anything. Maybe you just sit beside him like Arjuna did in the dust and the silence, and let the mystery be your companion. Maybe God doesn't need to be explained. Maybe God just needs to be felt, like a presence, like a whisper, like a friend you didn't realize you had. Tonight, before you sleep, ask yourself, if God was sitting beside me right now, what is the one thing that I would tell him? And when the answer comes, don't judge it. Don't analyze it. Because maybe, just maybe, that answer is this great mystery speaking back to you.